So here's another video to give you just another example of finding the least common denominator. So we're going to start with two fractions. So say you had 5/7 and 3/5. Okay, so the first thing you need to do, I mean, if you look at these, they obviously have different denominators, so if you wanted to add or subtract them, you couldn't, at least not very easily. So the first thing you need to do is to look at just your denominators. So we have 7 and we have 5. And then all you're going to do is list the multiples of 7 and 5, or skip count. So for 7, I would do 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, and then let's just do one more, let's say 42. Okay, so that's like if I did 7 times 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6. Okay, then do the same thing for 5. So I would do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Okay? So then I need to look and see which one is the smallest, which is different than greatest common factor, the smallest one they have in common. So if I look, I see they have 35 in common, and that might be the only one I have. So that means that my LCM, or least common multiple, is going to be 35. So then the next thing I do is I need to make these, so like if your question was just what's the least common denominator, 35 would be your answer. But I also want you to kind of figure out how to turn these into equivalent fractions so that you could then add or subtract them. So you would do 5/7, because that was one of our original fractions, and I want the new denominator to be 35. So you're going to do this just like you used to do equivalent fractions. So I would do 7 times what? It's going to get me 35, and I know 7 times 5 gets me 35. So then I have to do the same thing to the top, so multiply by 5, and that would be 25. So one fraction would be 25 over 35. And then I still have to do the second one, so I'd have 3/5. And again, I want my denominator to be 35. So I'll think 5 times what is 35, and I know that's 7. Or I could count up here, I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? And then same thing, 3 times 7, because whatever I do to the bottom, or the denominator, I have to do the numerator. And 3 times 7 gives me 21. And if I didn't know that, I could look up here and do 1, 2, 3. And it shows me 21. So my second fraction would be 21 over 35. Okay, so I wanted to give you one more example. So let's say I had the fractions this time 1/6 and 1/3. So again, I'm looking at my denominators. So I would do 6 and I would do 3. And then I'm going to list my multiples. So 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. Okay, and then I would do the same thing for 3. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. So now I'm looking for my least common multiple, so my LCM, and the most important part is the least. Okay, because if I look, I could say there's 18, they have that in common, they have 12 in common, they have 6 in common. So the one that's the least for my LCM would be 6. So if I look, I have 1/6 as one of my fractions, and I want my denominator to be 6. So nothing has to change here. I'm just multiplying them both by 1, because 6 times 1 is 6, 1 times 1 is 1. So that one gets to stay the same. Now for 1/3, because I have to do both, I want it to become 6 as my denominator. So 3 times what will get me 6, which is 2. And then I have to times 2 on the top, and 1 times 2 is 2. So my other one would be 2/6. So now I could easily add 1/6 and 2/6 to get 3/6, which was much easier than when I had 1/6 and 1/3. Hope that helps.